Thank you. This meeting is being broadcast on the internet and the recording of the meeting will be published on the Council's website. As a visitor in the public gallery, you may be filmed. By remaining in the public gallery, you consent to being filmed and for the recording of you to be made publicly available by the Council. A copy of the Council's live streaming and recording of the Council meetings policy is available at the back of this room and on the Council's website. So please check with one of our staff members if you have any questions. Council acknowledges the Wadawurrung traditional owners of this land and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of the Greater Geelong community today. So welcome everyone to Town Hall for tonight's meeting. Call for any apologies.
Apology, Councillor Grisbeck.
Yeah, leave of absence, and I have an apology for Councillor Harwood.
Can I just clarify that? Because I thought the Mayor, we gave leave of absence to, not an apology.
Yes.
So it should be recorded as a leave of absence and not an apology?
Is an apology for tonight because he's on a leave of absence.
No, which one is it? Sorry.
It's a leave of absence.
It is a leave of absence. So we've got 2 leave of absences tonight. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. Seek the confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 28th of May. Moved Councillor Sullivan and seconded Councillor Asher. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Seek any declarations of conflict of interest for items tonight? Just put your hand up if they arise. So straight into public question and submission time. We have a few questions that have come to us before tonight, and the first is from Michael Dickinson. Is Michael with us tonight? No, we'll take that one on notice. Amanda Fitzgerald? Amanda? Just come forward.
Thank you very much, councillors, for this opportunity. My name is Amanda Fitzgerald and I'm representing the Stop 5G Geelong community, and I have a few questions to ask. Thank you. Okay. Is the City of Greater Geelong Council aware of the 5G wireless network rollout which is currently happening in both Geelong West and Nor Lane? My second question to Council: although our PANZA, being the Australian Radiation Protection and Nuclear Safety Agency, although they admit that there are gaps in their knowledge of 5G, that this radiation will be absorbed into human tissue and that they cannot guarantee 5G to be safe, why are we set to be the human guinea pigs in this trial? And my third question is, who can I and the many other concerned citizens of Geelong work with within the council to apply the precautionary principle to allow an immediate halt on this rollout until further independent safety testing can be done to ensure that our community is safe? Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Look, we note your concerns regarding such technology. I've checked with our planning area, who advised that the rollout of the 5G network is controlled by the Commonwealth and state governments. It is not likely to be a planning issue that will directly involve the City of Greater Geelong. Given it is not our jurisdiction, if you could direct your query and concerns to your local and state federal MPs for their information and attention.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Amanda. Sarah Roberts. Evening.
Hello, I'm Sarah Roberts. Thank you for hearing and responding to my submission regarding the proposed 2019-2020 budget. In relation to item 21 on page 29 of the budget submissions minutes, I agree that one 650-metre footpath has been constructed in the last 5 years within the Education Activity Precinct, stated clearly multiple times in my submission. As per the minutes of 28th of March 2017, 64% of directly affected property owners formally submitted objections to the special charges scheme abutting the footpath along the south side of Pioneer Road, between Torquay Road and Beltana Street in Grovedale. Yet construction proceeded. My first question therefore relates to comments in the response in the minutes. What is your policy on the threshold level of agreement and support that is needed from property owners before you decide to declare the charges? First question. What is Council's current position on how Part 5, Division 2, 114 on page 96 of the Local Government Bill Exposure Draft will impact your upcoming special rates and charges schemes policy review? That was the second question. Regarding the 3 other footpaths over the past 5 years noted by the officer in the minutes, they are unrelated to my submission as they are over 2.3 kilometres away from the Grovedale West Primary School, heart of the 1 kilometre radius precinct that I referred to multiple times in my submission. I thank Council for seeking a City Works footpath and road prioritisation report in 2019.
Thanks, Sarah. Just in relation to question 1, the City has a special rates and charges policy and applies ministerial guidelines to the administration of the scheme.
Yes.
The guidelines say that where Council is contributing the majority of the costs, then it may proceed with the scheme despite there being objections. In the case of Pioneer Road, Council funded over 2/3 of the cost and decided to proceed with the scheme. Council assesses each scheme on its merits. In relation to question 2, it is now not clear what the State Government intends to do in relation to the special charges, rates and charges. Information about a proposed Local Government Bill 2019 has been released by the Minister for Local Government just last week. It has advised that as the independent review into the local government rating system will provide its recommendations to Government by the 31st of March of next year, previously proposed changes to the rates and charges provisions in the Local Government Act 1989 will not be introduced into the new bill. The provisions relating to rates and charges will continue to operate under the Local Government Act until the rating system review has been completed. The only exception to this will be that the new bill will amend the Local Government Act to provide for environmental upgrade agreements to be available to residential properties. So these are the answers to your questions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Dean Smith. Dean here?
Evening, councillors.
Dean?
My questions relate to item 3 on tonight's agenda, C2372 development overlay. So currently there's a lot of submissions in the system objecting to it. So are the current submissions for C372 null and void due to the proponents changing the development overlay at the 11th hour, which was last week?
The original traffic study provided by the proponent was conducted during the school holidays with... Oh, so that's another question.
The second question, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yep. Well, do you want to go through all the questions
sure.
there, Dean? Yep.
The original traffic study provided by the proponent was conducted during the school holidays with low traffic flow. Then another recent study was also conducted over a long weekend period. Don't the council think that these studies should be conducted during normal working days to get a true and correct count of the traffic movement down Gazapur Road and in the area? And shouldn't these studies be redone, shouldn't the existing studies be redone to reflect this? And my third question, the way the proponent has organised the consultation of the development is ridiculous. 1, sent the residents at the start of December where everyone was busy, we then went to council on the 11th of December when everyone was still busy. Public meeting was held down at Warm Ponds as a tick and flick event. There was no presentation given to the residents. It was a very noisy room full of mad people asking questions at various times to the same person. Now, the change in development overlay at the 11th hour, as in last week. Do you think this is a fair and reasonable way to inform the residents of this proposal?
Thank you, Dean, and there may be other questions in relation to C372 Cairns Road, and I thank you for your question. This is a matter that, as you stated, we're dealing with tonight. We have to approach our decision-making with an open mind, ensure that we act fairly and impartially, in good faith, and listen to both sides of the argument that is put to us for consideration. Because of this, we're happy to have heard your submission. We'll consider the points made but cannot provide an answer that prejudices the outcome of the related debate and decision-making later in the agenda. Thanks for your interest. I hope you appreciate that comment, but it will be discussed in a very short time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dean. Jim Haig. No, Jim's not here. Any other questions tonight? Yes, sir. Come forward.
Good evening, councillors. My name is Mark Spronk and I've got a couple of questions in relation to the same topic that's just discussed then, C372 on Hams Road, Warren Ponds. Question one is, are the councillors happy to adopt the officer's report when there are still strong objections from submissions that were put forward to the public from VicTrack, EPA, Vic Roads, Powercore, the Department of Transport and Boral in regards to drainage, noise and air quality pollution? And the second question I have is, why are the proponents now offering the council $500,000 to improve Gazapur Road when they themselves have stated in their reports that there's no perceivable change or increase of volume of traffic in Gazapur Road?
Thanks for your question, Mark, and unfortunately I'll give the same response to you that I gave to Dean. We're considering this item shortly.
Yep.
We've heard what you said. We appreciate our position on this.
Yep.
So thank you for your questions.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, otherwise we'll move on. Any petitions tonight? Being no petitions, we'll move on to the Section B reports. And the first item on the agenda is the declaration of the 2019-20 rates, the adoption of the Council Plan 2018-22, update 2019 and 2019-20 budget. Actually, before I call for a mover and a seconder on that, I want to highlight Mike Kelly, and Mike's in the second row there. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Mike Kelly for his dedication to managing the city's finances for the last 20 years and assisting the council and organisation in delivering 20 budgets. Mike started with the city on the 10th of April 2000 as Manager of Financial Services. Soon after the Y2K, Mike has let us know recently that he'll be leaving the city, so tonight will be the last budget he gets to see being adopted. Mike is known for his commitment and dedication to managing the city's finances, has been able to ensure the city has maintained a stable financial position during a period of significant change. Under Mike's guidance, the city's financial sustainability has been acknowledged externally by both the 2013 CT Management Review and the 2016 EY Review. The financial integrity of reporting delivered by Mike and his team has been exemplary, highlighted by the city never receiving any audit qualifications. Mike has delivered, as I said, 20 annual budgets for the organisation, has never missed a deadline in delivering the annual budget, and has provided a measured process for each briefing and budget session. He has patiently responded to questions from officers, councillors and the public for each budget he has delivered. So, Mike, on behalf of the council, I wish you all the best for your future endeavours. Look forward to catching up with you over the summer and I presume that even might be at the Yacht Club. So all the best, Mike.
Peter, I know we don't want to go around the whole chamber, but given I've been a councillor since 2010, could I just thank Mike as well, very quickly?
Absolutely, of course.
Yeah, look, everything you said is absolutely true, and I think you'll all agree, and Steph put it perfectly in an email today, that Mike is absolutely the ultimate gentleman and just a pillar of our organisation, and I've really enjoyed working with Mike over the years, particularly during the period where I had the responsibilities for the finance portfolio, and Mike's been very understanding of us learning councillors over the years, and under quite challenging circumstances when we're setting budgets. But Mike, you should be extremely proud of all the work that you've done, and thank you.
Councillor Aiken.
Not wishing to trump Councillor Contel, but I had the pleasure of knowing Mike when he first came to the council in 2000, and I was a councillor as well too. And I think what the community does need to understand with the budget process is that it actually isn't 9 to 5, a budget process. In fact, we'll talk about the budget tonight because it is coming up. But one of Mike's greatest qualities has been his patience with all of us, the administration and the managers with their ambitions, and the councillors with their ambitions as well too. And it's and that has meant that I know Mike's on to his 20th budget tonight. Well, that actually, for the broader community to understand, that means probably about 2,000 hours outside of 9 to 5 to create those budgets. In particular, even this year, we extended our budget periods to at least 10 o'clock to 10:30 on at least 4 occasions this particular budget. And if you multiply that by the number of times Mike's been participating in over 20 years, I suspect his family was very pleased to hear the news that was publicly released today, that they won't have Mike consumed by City of Greater Geelong budgets as he has been for the last 20 years. But Mike, thank you, because when you did start with the city in 2000, we weren't in a financially sustainable position. We'd just come from amalgamation of 7 different councils into one council. The financial sustainability of the organisation was not there. We'd just recently, before Mike's time, we actually retrenched 300 staff members before Mike started because of the severity of the financial position the council was in. But under Mike's management and leadership, the organisation is completely different to what it is then, and certainly the community does need to hear us talk about in glowing terms what Mike's been able to achieve over the last 20 years, and the fact that he's been able to survive at least 7 CEOs, to survive at least probably 14 mayors, to survive rate capping, and to survive a regulatory environment that a normal accountant or finance person would need to do in a workplace is a reflection of the quality of him as an individual. So, Mike, thank you for what you've done, and you certainly deserve all the praise and recognition that the councillors and the senior management team have said over the last 12 hours. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Item 1. Need a mover and seconder for that item. Mover Councillor Manane and seconded Councillor Aiken. Councillor Manane.
Thank you, Mr Acting Mayor. It's my pleasure this evening to move this motion, which really is containing 3 parts. The first part is to adopt the 2019 updates to Council's 2018-22 Council Plan. The second part is to declare the rating strategy for our budget 2019-20, and the third part is to seek approval for Council's budget for 2019-20. Firstly, just on the Council Plan, the update has been done. There's some additions to the deliverables and measurements for the 11 community strategies. I've just lost my... the council plan itself acts as a bit of a benchmark, if you like, to the budget and also the municipal health and wellbeing plan. So it is a good read. The updates are not over substantial from the original plan, but it's well worth an refreshing on the changes that have been made. With regard to the council's proposed rating strategy for the next 12 months, as you'd appreciate, our rating strategy is extremely critical to the budget because the actual rates and charges represent 62% of our income, so it's pretty critical that we get that right. And council's general rates do remain subject to the state government rate capping of 2.5%. So it is a fairly important exercise each year. Council's base average rate for the current year was $1,557, and that will increase in the new budget year to $1,596. That's an increase of $39, which I think is fairly manageable. Of course, council actually has 11 different rating groups, and for our residential rate category, which is the majority of population, of course, the 2019-20 rate, including the municipal charges and the waste collection, the increase will be an average of about 3% or $47. So again, a very manageable figure. If we can just turn to the budget itself, now the proposed budget for 2019-20, this document I think very much reflects council's approach of providing council with a stable and a financially responsible environment in which council can go away and do its business. In November we inherited the administrator's budget and we delivered on that operating surplus of about $2 million. In this council's first budget, the 18-19 year, we projected an operating profit of 3.1. In a couple of months' time, we will deliver on that result with an operating surplus very similar to the budget and possibly slightly higher. And I'd just like to say to you that when delivering budgets, the single most important factor that can adversely impact on your proposed budget is undoubtedly the quality and accuracy of your immediate past budgets and the ongoing performance of the business during those previous years. I'm pleased to advise that we will not be taking any difficulties from past years into this budget, as the business has performed well and the 2020 budget will therefore be free of difficulties. In fact, because of the positive performance of business during the past 12 months, we will have some capacity to expense some additional provisions in the 2018 and 2019 accounts to make sure that we cover those items relevant to years before the new budget and at the same time delivered on our budget expectation of an underlying profit of $3.1 million. So for all intents and purposes, we are to start the 2019-20 financial year with a relatively clean slate. And with a budgeted recurrent surplus of $1.4 million, a budgeted non-recurrent surplus of $76.8 million, therefore a net overall surplus of about $78 million. At our May Council meeting, we put our draft budget out to the community for some public scrutiny and also some feedback. We did receive written submissions, 52 in fact from the public. However, there have been no changes made to the budget as we had little capacity to actually include additional items. Whilst the community did submit some very good proposals, we do think that some of those commitments may be able to be taken up in maybe next year's budget. There are a lot of figures in these accounts, and they're quite extensive. A couple of those figures of note in the 2019-20 budget: capital works again running at $117 million, very substantial, and also our community grants program at $8.3 million, which is actually up 30% on the previous year. There is a very explanatory diagram in the accounts disclosing how expenditure is allocated, which is well worth some examination. For example, it discloses that 10% of council's expenses these days are spent on waste management. It's worth reflecting that your council has absorbed charges in its business, such as the cost of waste management, and also increasing demand for services and infrastructure driven by the expanding communities in which we live, but still being able to deliver on the budget expectations. I'd just like to take a moment to reflect on a couple of specific items in the budget that are close to my heart. We did allocate $1 million for food relief. As I've said in this place previously, last year 8,000 people in our community presented themselves to community service organisations in the Geelong region for requesting food for both themselves and their families. Since our draft budget has been released to the public, disclosing Council's intention to take a leadership position in finding a solution to this crisis, I have been contacted by numerous organisations, received pledges of support from various stakeholders in the industry, including pledges of financial support from the philanthropic industry. I congratulate my fellow councillors on their vision to support this initiative, and we look forward to all working together to help solve this, to help developing a solution, a sustainable solution in our community. I also highlight the $250,000 allocation to the solution for the Geelong Mall. This was an item that was unanimously supported by all councillors, and I think we're going to see some more work from councillors on that in the very near future, and in fact tonight some more information. Mr Deputy Mayor, I think my fellow councillors, Martin and the finance executive team and all staff who have put all the work in to collectively put these documents together should be congratulated. And finally, we have been advised tonight about the Council's Finance Manager, Mike Kelly, leaving. Mike has become an institution in the finance areas of this Council. And whilst I've known Mike for many years, since joining Council I've really come to appreciate the depth of his knowledge about Council business and his financial acumen. But most of all, the fact that he's been a great pleasure to work with. Mike, your expertise is going to be missed. We thank you for your guidance and wish you all the best in the future. With those few words, I'll pass it over to my colleagues. Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Manane. Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Mr Acting Mayor. Look, I'm pleased to be able to be seconding Mike Kelly's final budget on a personal level, and once we have already spoken to say thank you to Mike and the other officers. What I just actually want to talk about is put in perspective what the City of Greater Geelong's budget is, and these numbers can give an understanding of the complexity of what Council's actually dealing with. We have total income of about $459 million. So we're about to hit nearly $500 million in turnover in terms of this organisation. Our assets are actually $2.6 billion. And the responsibilities that come with that as councillors are immense. And the community should understand that we're actually putting a lot of work to reach the conclusions that we have in terms of our budget process. And what's unique about Geelong is it's actually a very complex local government and geographical area. Geelong is very unique in that it has a significant urbanised area. It is unique that it has a significant coastal area. It is unique that it has a significant rural area. And it also has some very significant natural assets as well within its boundaries. And the complexity of all those geographical areas does manifest itself in the competing interests that we have as councillors for our responsibilities of how to allocate our annual budget. And most councils in Victoria don't have to compete with what Geelong's competing with. Most of our metropolitan colleagues are usually totally urbanised. I mean, an example is the City of Melbourne has, I think, about a 32 square kilometre size, where we have a size of about 1,600 square kilometres. And that means our roads are longer. That means that our infrastructure that we have is significantly larger, and the complexity of the budget for our councillors to be able to juggle all those responsibilities is not an easy task. And what makes it even more complex is the number of federal electorates that we have actually covering our responsibilities as well too, and the state electorates as well too. And we've just seen a recent federal election which poured billions of dollars into the southern part of Geelong, but not into the northern part of Geelong. And that does impact our budget, because it actually changes the priorities that we have as councillors in terms of a budget sense, because we're forced to actually match dollar for dollar and actually change our commitments because of the level of funding that's actually directed into political geographical postcodes. And another complexity that all local government has to deal with is the issue of rate capping. And the rate capping is not a true policy position to actually force a council to actually be financially responsible. Rate capping is a fallacy. Most people tonight will leave from this budget believing that their rates will only have a capacity of have an increase of 2.5%. The reality is, under rate capping, that the majority of people have a change in their rates each year to be able to meet the capping requirements. The only thing that is capped is the total amount of income that the council can actually generate from rates within a 12-month period compared to the previous 12 months. We will see massive fluctuations in Geelong with the rate notices that will start going out on the 1st of July. And I'm pleased that the council has responded to that, in that we are actually saying that if you receive a 50% increase in your rate valuations, you will be entitled to hardship and special consideration by the council. Now, the confusion of the general public will be, well, how can my rates go up and my valuation go up in 50% when I've been told we have a 2.5% rate cap? Well, that's because the rate cap only looks at the total amount of money we collect. The legislative and regulatory system that we operate under in local government is that we have to actually have an annual revaluation of all our properties within local government. And that annual revaluation causes a fluctuation in the value of someone's property, whether commercial, whether industrial, or whether residential, or whether farmland, every single year. And the complexity of the financial responsibilities in creating an annual rate revenue system is a mathematical and accounting speciality that only a few people are actually able to undertake it. And it does mean that the headline of 2.5% is a fallacy. And I hope in the new legislation and the opportunity that we have to be able to influence the Minister for Local Government, rate capping is not delivering what the belief of the state government intended to be, and that is to try to lessen the burden of the financial impacts of rates on residential properties. Well, unfortunately, it's not achieving that. And we in Geelong have the issue that we have an immense amount of assets that are growing because of our residential population and also the age of our assets as well too. And the fact that we can only increase our revenue income by 2.5% to be able to renew those assets means we are continually falling behind every single year with our responsibilities to actually make sure that we have the best assets for our community and we can invest in our community. So where am I leading now to? And that relates to the public submissions. Please do not underestimate that Council did consider the public submissions that were presented before us. We did look at how we could make a change to our draft budget to reflect the submissions that were made to us, but the reality was the constraints that we worked under, the priorities that we had already placed, was that the information presented before Council didn't justify a change of our strategies that we had put in place and the priority projects that we had identified in the draft budget. So I do encourage the community to continue to engage with Council in terms of responses to budgets in the future, and when Council can respond, we certainly will respond as a place. And the only other comment I do wish to make is that to show the diversity of councillors in terms of our views and our discussions, Pat actually calls council a business. Well, I actually call government, we're a government. And I actually believe we can adopt business principles in terms of fulfilling our government responsibilities, but ultimately we are servants of the people. We are here for the people, and we are here by the people. And as a consequence, we shouldn't, I don't believe, talk of ourselves as a business. We should talk of ourselves as the third tier of government, which has an immense responsibility to the Geelong community and the broader Victorian electorate in terms of the leadership and advocacy that we can have on many issues. And the budget is an opportunity for us to do that. And hopefully rate capping and the removal of that is an outcome that we can try to achieve. Thank you very much, Mr Acting Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. Any other councillors speak on this?
Yes, I'd like to speak if no one else would. I think that Councillor Murnane and Councillor Aitken have articulated the details of the budget appropriately, so I only want to make a couple of comments. One in regards to the capital program, which you'll see that is at some $117 million, and about $111 million of that capital program is new funding. And the beauty of local government when it comes to capital programs is that this is the part that we play in generating activity and providing employment opportunities for our local community, and we'll talk a little more about that with the procurement policy that comes up later on in the agenda. But the advantage of a large capital program such as this is that with local government, what we're able to do is promptly inject this funding into the community with really good and appropriate infrastructure that provides a better life and a better outcome for our general community, whilst also providing opportunity for employment. And I think that's really important to understand because whilst when you look at the numbers, you think they're large, but it actually is a twofold benefit and perhaps even more so with the Capital Works program that we have, whether it be roads, whether it be footpaths, whether it be public toilets, sporting facilities, grant programs that get filtered out into the smaller organisations. The rubber really hits the road quite quickly, and most would be aware that when state and federal governments want to spend money quickly, they generally filter it through local government. And so that's the part that we play. I won't go into all of the excellent initiatives that we've been able to get over the line for Brownbill Ward, because I'm sure that there's other councillors around the table that may want to do that. But I just wanted to touch on a couple. One area that has been brought to my attention for some time now as being a real challenge, and whilst it has some historical links, are the underground toilets in Moorabool Street. And they go back a long way, but also, unfortunately, are attracting some real undesirable activities. Notwithstanding the efforts that go into managing or trying to manage those public toilets, it's just the nature of the infrastructure that lends itself to that kind of behaviour. And it's really pleasing to see that we've got funding in the budget to replace those public toilets in Moorabool Street with changing places toilets, which are for all abilities. And I think that's a fantastic initiative that's been able to get imported into this budget. But what everyone must understand is that that idea actually came from the community. That was not an idea that councillors just thought of. In fact, during the campaign, there was quite a secondary campaign going on by the community. In fact, I think it was led from the north, in fact, that we need changing places toilets in Geelong. And I think that was a real beauty, and we thank the community for that. I think I'm going to leave it at that, other than to say I'm extremely pleased that we have free parking in this budget for all of the reasons that I've spoken about previously, particularly when the matter came to council. One, to try to attract people and visitors back into our CBD to try and help with incremental business revenue opportunities, and also to assist our residents and visitors to Geelong financially. And whilst it may only be a small step in the first 30 minutes, it's one large step for this council. And so thanks to the councillors that have supported this along the way, and I really look forward to the budget being adopted and anticipate that it will be, and that initiative also gets over the line.
Thank you, Councillor Contell. Councillor Nelson?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I wanted to have a quick chat about some of the things going on in Highton, and specifically wanted to mention one Highton resident that calls me day and night to get this project up, and we've been working on it for probably 8 years now. I'm pleased to say that the Highton Bowls car park will go ahead. There's $600,000 in the budget for it, and it's here, Ken. I can see it in black and white, or in black, on page 7 of 13. So it's here and it's in, so we're ready to go. So give me a call tomorrow morning and we'll work on that. Other things that we managed to get through was the Highton Province Estate Playground. Where else did we go? Barwon Soccer Club, $300,000 for them. And something that's close to my heart now, especially because I've got a new fur baby from the pound, is a fenced dog park. So hopefully we'll get more than 2, as Councillor Sullivan said, for $600,000. Hopefully we'll get half a dozen. We shall see. But I'll let other fellow councillors talk on this budget. But just happy to say that to Ken Mansfield out there, $600,000 for Highton car park bowls for the Bowls Club car park. So a much needed bitumenisation project there, with nearly 500 cars parking there most days. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Any other comments? Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mr Acting Mayor. I think all councillors would agree that the getting to the end of the budget process is probably a bittersweet moment. It's a difficult process, and I think other councillors have alluded to why that can be difficult. The really tricky thing is, I think, balancing all the different community needs and requests and expectations against what our capacity is to provide those. We certainly heard at the budget submission, the community submissions hearing, from a whole range of really legitimate, we heard a whole range of really legitimate requests for funding. As other councillors have said, we did really listen to those, and it's difficult to turn around and say, look, we just don't have the capacity to fund those. There are certainly things in this budget. You know, I look at this budget, I see some great things. There are a whole lot of other things I would like to have seen in the budget, but hopefully we can, start to get some more of those in the next round. Likewise, I'm sure there are other councillors they've got projects in and others that they failed to get in that they really would have liked to see in this budget. So it's always a difficult process. Some of the things I'd like to highlight, not so much ward-based, but across the municipality. And again, I think going back to what Councillor Contell said, these are things that come from the community, and we do listen, we take it on board, and it does eventually turn into something more concrete. The implementation of our waste strategy, which aims to achieve zero waste to landfill from all of our operations and services, has got money to fund that in this budget. We've got a plastics wise strategy that we'll be developing, so that's to reduce single-use plastics across our municipality, and that's something we had some strong community input about. Another really common question I get from the community is about what we're doing about food waste, because we know that makes up a huge proportion of what goes into landfill, and I'm really pleased that we'll be starting a program looking at ways we can divert that food waste from our curbside collection. Again, municipality-wide, we're developing a mental health and wellbeing action plan. Mental health is something that is increasingly important to the community, and I think as councils, as local government, we're realising that we have a really big role to play in that space. And additionally, we've got some extra funding going into the work that's going on around developing our reconciliation action plan, the first one for this council. So there's some excellent initiatives in here, but I do appreciate that there will be people in the community who have put forward projects and have needs that we haven't been able to address this budget, but keep lobbying us, keep telling us what you need, because it is important that we hear those messages, and the message does filter through. We certainly hear you, so we thank you for all of your feedback, and hopefully some people will find something in this budget that they can be really pleased with.
Thank you, Councillor Mansfield. I might comment on it now. This budget, with a turnover of $426 million and an underlying recurrent surplus of 1.4, represents a commitment to the ongoing provision of services and a significant capital works program. The annual budget includes a range of activities and initiatives to be funded that will contribute to achieve the strategic objectives specified in the Council Plan update. The annual budget converts the activities and initiatives identified into financial terms to ensure there are sufficient resources for their achievement. Our balance sheet continues to grow as the community grows, with net assets of $2.5 billion. Debt levels will increase with new loans of $35.3 million forecast to deliver the capital works program. The amount of borrowings as of the 30th of June of next year are forecast at $91.8 million from $65.6, but the interest cost on these borrowings will not increase in the same proportion, with interest rates at historic lows. As a council, we must work to reduce costs wherever possible, to reallocate scarce resources to ever-demanding areas requiring attention. The efficiency dividend of $2.4 million is a very transparent way of demonstrating to the community that Council is serious to work with management to achieve efficiencies. This budget reflects the views of the community, with councils actively engaging, listening to the community to develop priorities. This has directly influenced the major initiative in this budget to increase available grant funding for the community to $8.2 million. In particular, we have increased the community facility infrastructure grants from $1 to $2 million in response to the demand. Revenue will increase by the rate cap of 2.5%. Careful attention was given to the impact of the 2019 revaluations, such as farm valuations movement relative to other differentials. It is important to understand that rate increases are quoted as average increases, and there are always individual properties may experience rate increases greater than the 2.5%, while some ratepayers experience rate reductions. This reflects individual property valuation movement relative to the average, being higher or lower. We thank the residents who have taken time to lodge a submission regarding the 2019-20 budget. There were 25 different topics raised through the submission process, and I can assure, as other councillors have said, 52 submitters that we have listened. Whilst it's not always possible to fit in additional funding requests when the budget is so finely tuned, we're certainly better placed and better aware of these issues for future budgets. And I just wanted to quickly highlight some of those strategic priorities taken from the budget, and as Councillor Mayne has highlighted, the support food relief, the Geelong region, $1 million, the community infrastructure, Drysdale Integrated Children's Centre, $7.5 million, Purnell Road Child and Family Centre, $6 million, the Bellpost Hill Enhanced Early Learning Centre, $2 million, down at St Leonard's, the Early Childhood Centre, $1 million. And as Councillor Contell has mentioned, I wanted to highlight as well the Moorabool Street changing places and unisex toilets, $460,000, which is a very, very important project. And the changing places, and there's also a changing places toilet that forms part of the project down on the waterfront Safe Harbour, which is $3 million. And as Councillor Contell also has highlighted, the flexible parking solutions trial and new technology, $700,000, and as Councillor Mansfield has mentioned too, the hard waste collection service trial of $3 million. And the sustainable development, Councillor Mason, not to be down the Sparrowvale Wetlands project, $3.8 million. So just highlight some of the many projects that the council will be undertaking in the next 12 months. So I want to thank my fellow councillors for working hard through the budget process to deliver the council plan, update and budget ready for the adoption prior to the 30th of June. With strategic briefings and numerous budget briefings, we have worked cooperatively and in good spirits most of the time to achieve an outcome. So any other councillors to speak on this? Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mr Acting Mayor. I think it's nearly all been said. I'd just like to reiterate how complex this budget is and how complex the environment is that we're working in. And from the Bellarine point of view, we have something like 14 townships and hamlets, and we've had to find ways of addressing the needs of the people in each one of those places. And of course, as is in the rest of the municipality, you cannot satisfy every need. But in time, we do hope that we will be able to address the needs. But some of the things that haven't been mentioned might be senior citizens car park ceiling, or Bellarine Peninsula Aquatic Facility feasibility study, sports pavilions, bus shelters, business case for the potato shed, and on it goes. But in addition to that, we also have been giving careful thought to the regional needs, the regional rural needs, and I'm very pleased that we do have a project now called Restoring the Rural Landscapes, and I have great anticipation for that recurrent project. And similarly, now we're going to go ahead with a scoping feasibility study for livestock and information exchange. So we have exciting times ahead, and I'm very pleased that we've been able to work so collaboratively together to come to this point.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. If there be no other councillors, back to you, Councillor Manane, to close.
Thank you, Mr Acting Mayor. Just one final comment which I think needs to be addressed is that, and with your grace, I'll use an analogy. If we're about to run a marathon, we would be very keen on getting ourselves very fit to do it. And this is a 4-year budget, and of course, 4-year set of documents that we've put out here. And we are about to run a marathon. We're about to spend $90 million on a new office and another $10 to $20 million on technical upgrades. So it is probably the biggest commitment that this council has ever faced. And the work that we've done as a group over the last 2 years, and including this budget presented tonight, is going towards getting us in a position to be able to meet that challenge, that to get us fit for purpose. We will, in our next budget, have to be drawing down money for actual construction of the head office in our 21-22 budget and beyond. So I think it's been very important that the work's been done to make sure that we've continued to satisfy the calls of the community, and that's something that is an annual task and an annual challenge for us, and also to keep the level of services up, but to make sure the business, and I'm sorry to be using that word all the time, Councillor Aiken, but make sure the business is in a state to be able to meet the challenges, which will be very substantial in the next couple of years, with the challenges we have and what we intend to do with our new head office. So thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Thank you. Well done, everyone. Item number 2 is the traffic flow movement and congestion in Mallet Street, Green Spine area.
Mr Acting Mayor, I've got an alternate recommendation I'd like to put forward for consideration, if I may, please.
Councillor Contel.
Thanks. What I'll do, Mr Acting Mayor, is I will talk to the alternate up front. If it gets adopted to be debated, I probably will add very little after that, because I'm going to put my case up front, if that's okay. So,
so I'll need a seconder for that item. Councillor Nelson.
Thanks for that, Mr Acting Mayor. So, the items that I've noted in the alternate are highlighted. You might have to scroll down further in a minute to just go through them, but some minor amendments up the top. What this is in relation to is a report that we asked the CEO to deliver through the team in regards to the predominantly traffic movement and connectivity of what we now know as the Green Spine area. And for those that are unfamiliar with that, the area we're talking about is Mallet Street in between Yarra and Moorabool. And whilst I thank the officers for all the work they did and really appreciate them doing it in the time frame that we asked of them, now that it's here, I do have some matters that I'd like to raise with the team and ask councillors to consider these, because you'll note that in the notice of motion that the two main additions are that in 11.3 that we note that with the exception of PM eastbound traffic, all other legs of the Moorabool Street-Mallet Street intersection have resulted in comparatively minor increases or decreases in travel time. But what I'd like to add in there is that any decreases are largely due to the decrease in vehicular traffic entering or egressing the Mallet Street Green Spine, which is in line with what's in the contents of the actual report. What I didn't want people to immediately think is that because we've introduced the infrastructure into Mallet Street, which we know has restricted traffic flow as it was intended to do so, and by removal of the turning lanes and the installation of some of the bike infrastructure, that has all of a sudden made traffic flow a lot faster through that section. So I just wanted to highlight that. And the next major addition is to request the Chief Executive Officer to provide a report to Council by November 2019, which includes an outline of the work scope the potential impacts on the green spine design, pros and cons, costs and timelines for the implementation to install and introduce vehicle turning lanes back into Mallopp Street at the intersections of Mallopp Street and Yarra, and Mallopp Street and Moorabool Street. Now, the reason I ask this, and so that councillors don't fear too much here, we're not asking officers to change anything, we're asking officers to bring back further information so that we as a council can collectively make a more educated decision on what we would like to occur in this space going forward. And as I was alluding to, the reason I raise this is because many of the experts and consultants that are informing me personally and providing me information are suggesting that from a connectivity aspect and from a safety perspective and from an increase in incremental business point of view, that there is aspects of the green spine that are not working. And before I go into some of that detail, I just want to make it very clear that from a personal perspective, I'm actually fully supportive of greening Geelong. I'd like that understood and on record that I'm actually supportive of that, and that there are many aspects of the green spine, particularly from an aesthetic perspective, and in creating a place where people are more encouraged to visit, and from a place that's more appealing and safer to the community. I actually support all of that. But the experts that I'm referring to, which charge nothing for their feedback, in fact they give it freely, are the retailers, are the property owners, are the community at large, are suggesting that the street, in terms of the matters that I raised before with connectivity, safety and business, is not actually functioning as they had anticipated or expected. And I know that I would be amongst a number of councillors here, perhaps all, that would hold these experts in very high regard because they wake up generally every morning running their small businesses and having to survive off that. Now, the report suggests that since the Green Spine's implementation, vehicle volumes have decreased some 56%, and that pedestrian movement has increased 11%. Now, again, I don't want to be critical, but at a glance that may seem to be quite successful. But according to the experts, it's far from a pass just yet. Equally, what sits very uncomfortably with me is that part of the proposal in the report is that we install directional signage that directs visitors, residents and people that are travelling to the CBD with their vehicles to please, if you possibly can, choose an alternative route to Mallopp Street. Now that really worries me when we're trying to generate more activity in the CBD. And as I've said before, we're not giving the community, us or the state or federal government, appropriate alternatives for that to be fully successful. If you're on the Bellarine, as my Bellarine colleagues would well know, to try to get to the Princes Freeway is not always that simple, and generally you're having to go through the CBD. We don't have many alternatives. Our public transport is not efficient and effective, it's not frequent enough, and the community is telling me that they don't feel like it's clean or safe enough to use either. So, we're not giving the community many alternatives than to use their vehicles at this point in time. So, in order just to cut off or restrict the movements in Mallock Street as we have, is now already obviously reducing the traffic through that street, which it was well intended, as I mentioned, but it's now starting to congest the streets around it. And only recently, as our acting mayor be well aware, we've been, contacted by concerned retailers in Ryrie Street, saying that, since the changes in Mallock Street, the traffic has increased significantly in Ryrie. Truck movements obviously haven't slowed down. It's more dangerous and more congested than it ever was. And this can only potentially worsen when we start to fully implement what we adopted about a month ago now with the further expansion of the cycling infrastructure into Jerringhap Street and Moorabool Street. We're going to turn Jerringhap Street from a 4-lane road to a 2-lane road. So I won't go on too much further. All I'm asking councillors is to please consider allowing the CEO to do a little more work before we weld ourselves to this solution that we have in place today. I don't like to necessarily call out the media outlets, but there's been some comments made just recently that it's too early to make a call on the green spine. Well, in my opinion, that really lacks business and commercial acumen, because you don't go and build the whole thing and then have a look at see how it's going when we're already getting an example of how it's working now. If we continue on and not at least look at what the possibilities might be with a more transitional type of solution, then we'll get what we're given, I guess, once it is fully implemented, all the way from Jerringhap down to the gardens. So this is not making any decision tonight. All it's asking is for the councillors to be better informed. Life will go on as normal tomorrow until such time as we decide to do anything else. And at this point in time, we're not deciding to do anything else at all other than to ask for some additional information. So I'll leave it at that for the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Contell. Councillor Nelson.
I'll reserve my right, Mr Deputy Mayor.
The councillor comment on this? Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Having read the amendments, I felt relatively comfortable with the amendments. After Councillor Contell spoke, he almost convinced me not to agree with it, because many of the things Councillor Contell said I questioned to some extent. I've been attending the G21 transport pillar for most of the year, or most of the 2 years, and I understand that there are big picture plans for the movement of traffic through Geelong. There are routes that have been designed. There is a big picture, and that just one element is not explaining the whole thing. So Ryrie Street, certainly there have been questions about Ryrie Street and the trucks going through that, but that is designed in the long term to be, to some extent, a through road. Similarly, McKillop Street. But when we look at it objectively, I think that if we consider the pros and cons as is written, and we do consider the green spine design and what its intent is, if you look at design, you have to look at the intent. So if we look objectively at the pros and cons, I've no problem for us to have a greater depth of information. But if we're begging the question and saying we want to prove that we can't have a green spine, or that the traders, and I don't accept that all the traders are unhappy, I know traders that are happy with it, So, and I know that there are more than one lot of experts. There's a lot of different experts, and there's maybe a greater dimension in the debate. The bottom line is, I don't mind if we look at things objectively and get more evidence, as long as it's done in a dispassionate and, using the correct sense of the word, disinterested way. So, in that sense, I'll overlook some of the things that Councillor Contell said tonight and look at the actual motion and the sense of the motion. I can accept it.
Thank you. Councillor Mason. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr Acting Mayor. Now, I just want to say that whilst we see here in our alternate recommendation the purpose of this noting, I just want to publicly say that I believe that our public education on this project so far has been insufficient. The average passerby saw Malop Street shut down, saw the business owners struggle, and that when it was reopened, they saw a loss of car parks, and in their place, bike lanes. Now, these bike lanes are an important part of our developing cycling network, but they're not the sole purpose of the Green Spine, as many in our community currently believe. The purpose is for our CBD to not be a thoroughfare, for it to evolve in its purpose of being a destination instead, to increase pedestrian access and movement, to increase sales for the local businesses along their path. This council will soon face the issue of stage 2 of this project, and it will be a highly controversial matter. Now, we can make the most researched and educated decision in this chambers, but if we do not step up our community engagement to inform our community of what our goal is and our reasoning behind it, they'll be left in the dark, they'll be angry, and they'll be justified. So I implore that we step up our message so that people know and understand that whilst change can be difficult, it is for a reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Now, Councillor Murnane.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Look, it's hard to argue against having a right-hand turn at Marrabul and Yarra for cars to turn if Malop Street is to continue to be a through traffic alternative for the city. I looked at the data, and it concerns me that the busy part of the day is still people coming to work and going home. That 9 o'clock period and that 5 o'clock period. So even though we've had this reduction of traffic of 56%, I think the number was, we've still got that curve that is going the wrong way. I'd like to see the busiest time of the Green Spine to be the shopping hour, and not to be the coming and going home hour for workers. So we still haven't got the behaviours right, and I agree with Councillor Sullivan. We need to get the education better. So I think the call from Councillor Contell is a bit early. I think we really need to see this through at least till, I would see, at least another 12 months to see whether we get any improvement in the traffic behaviours, and give the Green Spine a chance. Yes, I don't have a problem seeking more information, but I do have a problem where that might lead to, because possibly, a decision might be made that is before its time, and I don't think we've got enough evidence about what this Green Spine is going to do for the city, based on 12 months of activity. So I'm afraid I would not be in favour at this stage. I would like to see us to continue to give the Green Spine an opportunity to perform, and to see if it can fulfil the outcomes that it was originally in place for. It also worries me a bit that in Geelong we've got a habit of doing things and then undoing them. We've done it endlessly with the mole, and we've done it with other parts. We don't seem to be able to I guess hold our position for a period long enough to find out whether something's actually going to work. And I think this is a very good example of it. It's a high-profile example because everybody's talking about it. I really do think we need to give this some time to work. And then if it doesn't, and I think it will, then we could re-examine it and maybe tweak it a bit. But I don't think we've given enough time yet. So, and I don't see a lot of difficulty in asking the council to do some more work. But I favour actually the alternative of actually giving it a chance to perform, and then maybe with greater performance, the work that we do might be different. So I'm not in favour of the alternative motion.
Any other councillor? I might just make a comment. I'm supportive of the alternate recommendation, but I also think that the green spine is working. Councillor Munro, I think it's working well, but I see no harm in this alternate. I simply see this as perhaps digging a bit deeper than what we previously have to greater depth. So that's why I'll keep it brief. That's why I'm supportive of the recommendation. Councillor Asher.
Thanks, Mr Acting Mayor. Look, I agree with what you've just said. I'm fully supportive of the attempts to improve the Central Geelong experience. I sat next to Brett Ince on Friday, so I'm all about the experience now because he's the tourism guru. Look, clearly there's a range of opinions when there's visible change in particular, and I agree, though, that we could do with some more research and information, and I don't actually think this is undoing anything. I think the alternate recommendation doesn't really present an onerous burden on the project or the CEO, so I support it.
Thank you. Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mr Acting Mayor. Look, I suppose I had to think about this one fairly carefully, and it was difficult as I suppose I would have liked a little bit more time to think about this. I agree that in essence what we're doing is asking for a bit more information here, but I have some sympathy with what Councillor Manane said about whether this is the right time to be asking for that information, or do we need to let this project run for a bit longer before we can make that judgment. But look, in essence, I don't have an issue with asking for some more information. I think there are some other things in the report that are really interesting about what's happening with the green spine, and in a sense it depends on what perspective you come to it with. If you look at, as Councillor Contell has highlighted, the original purpose was to reduce traffic movement through Mallup Street, because we're not wanting people to be using it as a way to get from one side of Geelong to the other. We want people to be spending time actually moving around in the city, and I spend quite a bit of a time as a pedestrian in the city, and I have to say the experience along that green spine section is so different really now because of the changes that have been made. The difficulty, another difficulty, is that it's not complete. So it is one of those things that will always be hard to assess. The full utility of things like the bike lanes until it's a complete route. And that's where it comes down to being able to see through our vision. But I think the request for some more information is not unreasonable. We'll see what that comes back with. I think included in any report we get back, and I suspect this will happen, it would be good to look quite broadly at the implications of this, because this doesn't just affect traffic movement along Mallup Street, but has implications for our entire transport network plans for the CBD. So we really need to think about the implications across the board. The other thing is I would just wonder if we were to reintroduce turning lanes, I suspect our traffic engineers will tell us that all that will do is lead to some more cars using it, and it'll find a new balance point where it'll be just as congested as it was before, because there'll be more cars in that space. So, as tends to happen with traffic movements. But look, I'm not a traffic engineer, and I'd rely on their expertise as part of this report. But look, on balance, I'm happy to support the alternate, given that it at this stage is really just asking for some more information.
Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Mr Acting Mayor. Look, I too support the recommendation because it actually isn't making a significant strategic change. It is part of our responsibility to continuously review and actually ask for review and ask for evidence and information to be presented before us. What's really fascinating, I think, about the Green Spine at this point in time is it really is a project showing the competing interests that we have as councillors. I mean, we have the responsibility to now, we have a responsibility to tomorrow, and we have a responsibility to the future. And the Green Spine is an example of a project that's very difficult to actually integrate those competing interests. And as a consequence, we need to consider what are all those competing interests and make sure that we do make the right decisions for the community that are represented in those interest groups. I must say on a personal level that I think one of the design aspects of stage one that I think we've missed a great opportunity in is that we are creating a green canopy in the CBD of Geelong, and we actually aren't reflecting any of our cultural history with our Indigenous community. And I would actually like to see that in future stages that are actually considered that we do either modify the existing stage one or certainly embrace into the other stages that we consider a cultural walk or some way of recognising our Indigenous community. The fact we're about to enter into a RAP, which is a significant document about our reconciliation with our First Peoples in the Geelong community, I can actually see the Green Spine as a great opportunity to able to work in partnership with our Indigenous community, work in partnership with the state government, because this project actually is a partnership project with the state government, and deliver what could be quite a significant piece of work that works with our Indigenous community. So I hope that is embraced in future stages. But I do also too just want to make some comments about some of the challenges of the Green Spine at this point in time. Certainly traffic flow is one of them, which is what's been discussed tonight and asked for additional information to be presented to the community. There are significant issues about safety we need to address. The fact that a cyclist can ride down Mallup Street, but the containment of the curb and channeling is actually causing problems that a bike rider can't exit in a safe manner if there is a need to actually do that. And we're now starting to see that drivers as well too, the actual design of the curb and channeling is actually causing problems that if there is an accident, that emergency vehicles can't access the Green Spine. In fact, it actually is a log jam. And I think all of us, I hope, have actually experienced some of the issues where cars are actually trying to change their movement to actually get back out of the Green Spine when there has been log jams. And some of those are design issues that we should be considering in future stages associated with it. I'm also concerned about the fact that it is high maintenance and we still don't have the quality of maintenance that is required for that site location. And I just witnessed in the last week where maintenance work is being undertaken on the site location, and the trailers and vehicles that were undertaking the maintenance were actually parked all over the bike lanes because they couldn't access the road or the footpath to actually undertake the maintenance. So there was significant maintenance work that was required. So I personally believe that what we do need to do is to have a review of the design. We do need to make a firm commitment of our statement about greening and green canopy that the Green Spine does bring as a council. And I don't think I've actually ever heard one of these councillors in this council talk against the strategic vision of greening the centre of Geelong and the opportunity associated with the Green Spine. But I do believe we have to look at the opportunities and the challenges that have been presented by stage one to make sure that we don't duplicate it in any of the other stages. There is a significant amount of money that's been poured into the future stages, so it's not like this project's not going to be delivered. It certainly is going to be delivered, but what we do need to do is work with the design, because ultimately this is really just urban infrastructure, and councils and state and federal governments have a great history of changing urban infrastructure with the current trends and the current activities, and I think we can learn a lot from stage one to improve it, but certainly one of the aspects I think we do have to understand is there has to be much more broader community engagement in the physical design of the location. I haven't been presented with any evidence to see that the broader community was involved in the design. I actually saw that that urban architects were certainly significantly involved in the design of the infrastructure, but I think certainly for future stages for the Green Spine, we do need to involve broad community consultation, and that will assist, I believe, some of the concerns that have been raised by other councillors in terms of education and taking the community with this project. And I should also say too, with my hat as the disability chair in the council, I can assure you that I've been given numerous number of complaints from those people about accessibility in the Green Spine area at this particular time. And it does concern me that the actual design, and in particular the curb and channeling, is restricting people with disabilities to actually access that part of Geelong. And that certainly we have to be an inclusive community, and the urban design that's been installed at this point in time has caused angst amongst our community that aren't fully able. And I actually do believe we do have to respond to that in the current stage and also in future stages as well too. And if we are ignorant to all those issues, unfortunately in 15 to 20 year time it will be ripped up. That is the pure reality, that if we don't actually recognise that there are concerns that are being raised by our community now, we are being ignorant to the fact that it will be changed in the future. But the important statements that we need to make tonight are that Council does support the greening of the centre of Geelong. It does wish to find a balance between now, tomorrow and the future, and the recommendation before us isn't actually undermining any of those strategic direction of the council or painting the council as not a progressive council. In fact, it's really just saying we wish to review, have a look at stage one and actually make some valued judgments about what impact the Green Spine is making on our livability and our community at the present time, and hopefully we can make a better project out of the Green Spine.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. Councillor Nelson.
Sorry, I was lost in Councillor Aiken's words then. Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Aiken. It's interesting, Mr Deputy Mayor, that just before the report on the traffic flow, item number 2 is on our soft copies here is a listing of submissions in order of receipt, and there's about 50 submissions there to the previous budget that we've just moved. And they're not calling for bike lanes or a green spine. It's interesting what they're calling for. And most of them are for car parking. That's quite interesting to note. I certainly want to thank Councillor Quintel for bringing this alternate motion. We all want the green spine. Thanks, Councillor Aitken. We all want a green spine, and that's not at question here. What we need to do is admit that we may have got something wrong, and I think the CEO will be able to find that out. I think we need to ease the squeeze on Mallup Street and certainly on Ryrie Street. But what I can't understand is in this report that we're still in this interim phase of this development in the centre of Geelong, and part of the report is actually calling on the police to be diverted from police work, to be fining people $159 for a blocking intersection. I've blocked the intersection before, and I'm sure there's many people here that have blocked that intersection in the centre of town where the two malls meet, or the two basically Plaza and Market Square meet. And this report is calling for the police to be diverted from police work to fine people $159. I don't think we should be bringing a stick to people. I think we should be encouraging people into the CBD, and fining people $159 for a mistake that's hardly their own, I don't think is the right approach that this council should be taking. I think that less traffic in Mallup Street down 56% is probably a good thing, and if that's what it's designed for. But as someone that uses Ryrie Street, I think that's increased 56%. I disagree with Councillor Manane, with Councillor Gibb, that says Ryrie Street needs to be part of the thoroughfare of Geelong. I don't think it should be part of the thoroughfare for Geelong. I think it should be moved up to McKillop, and then the other one should be down across the break and then out to the Bellarine that way. As Councillor Aitken said, this is certainly a nightmare for people with disability. I get constant calls from people with disability. I work in the disability industry, as you know, Councillor Aitken. I get calls about how bad this is for people with disability to try and get access across. And parking cars there is a problem as well. When you need to, if you've got a van and you need to access the rear of the vehicle, that's quite problematic. And then you have to get out of the back of the van if you're in a chair, for example, go out across the road and down the road, and then go across into the crossing there where pedestrians cross. So yes, I think we've got a lot of these things wrong, but we need the CEO to find out if we can put those turning lanes back in, if it's warranted, that is. Councillor Gibb also called for a big picture, and I think that's right. I couldn't agree more, but the problem with big picture is that there's no state money left for this project. Council is certainly putting in more money for this project, but there's no state money, as I understand. They had $100 million for bike lanes for the TAC, but that all was spent, and the state government has taken all the TAC's operating surplus. So the TAC aren't building bike lanes anytime soon, and the state government are using the TAC to prop up their own budgets. I don't think they're building bike lanes anytime soon. So we certainly need to get the CEO to see if we can tweak this just a little bit. I think we need more pedestrians in the CBD, and I really agree with that. But until we fix the public transport system, again, from the state government, this problem's only going to get worse. So I fully support Councillor Quintel to seek some more information and get the CEO to bring this forward to see if we can tweak this just a little bit more, Mr Deputy Mayor. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Back to you, Councillor Quintel.
Thanks, Mr Acting Mayor. I probably should quit while I'm ahead. I've done a straw poll here. It looks like I've got some loose support to potentially get this over the line to ask for some more information. I value, and sincerely mean that I value everyone's input. The debate that was provided has helped articulate the report and some of its intent. And please just appreciate that, it's just representing the community that's at least speaking to me, by and large, to bring this to this point. There was a lot of discussion around engagement and communication, particularly from Councillor Sullivan. I think he nailed that. Councillor Aitken talked about the design. I absolutely agree, and that's the message that's being put to me as well, from an accessibility point of view, from a safety perspective, and I couldn't live with myself if we didn't at least look at this a little further. Heaven forbid one of the larger retailers gets the stitch with us, and we haven't at least looked at all options. So I'll leave it at that, Mr Acting Mayor.
Thank you. I'll put the alternate recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Is carried.
I might just division that if I could, Mr Acting Mayor.
Certainly. All those in favour? Against? Thank you.
Thanks.
Item number 3 is the amendment C372 Hams Road, Warren Ponds, consideration of submissions. Been moved Councillor Nelson and seconded Councillor Manane. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor, or Mr Acting Mayor. Now, there's a lot of people in the gallery. I'm sure this is what you're here for. I've spoken to most of the people that are out there in the gallery and listened to most of their concerns. I certainly agree that the way this has been portrayed by the developers was a bit haphazard, to say the least. Myself and the mayor were down there at that information forum, if that's what you could call it. So I have listened to most of the concerns raised by the residents abutting Hams Road and on Hams Road. I understand their concerns that throwing $500,000 at a roundabout will solve Gazipur Road's problems. I think it probably needs 10 times that. So what this is about is getting a submissions panel from the minister, who will be, from what I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, Gareth, some subject matter experts of probably 2 to 3 people that will hear all concerns over a submissions hearing that will last probably 5 to 10 days, where everyone will get their voice heard, and that will take probably until the end of the year. Sometime next year in 2020, those recommendations will then come to council, and then council will hear those recommendations and submit that report to council. Then you can have your opportunity to speak once again. So, unlike we will certainly be listening to the community, and certainly that panel will be listening to the community. So we've got a long way to go yet, so please be patient, and everyone will be heard in this process. It's not going to just be the developers are coming in and this is what they want and that's what they'll get. Everyone will get their voices heard. So please make sure you submit to either to the submissions panel or to council when it comes back to council, probably next year. I'll leave it to my fellow councillors to have a chat about that further on.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Manane.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Acting. Like Councillor Nelson has advised, there's been a lot of consultation on this particular subdivision. We've heard from the developers, and effectively what we had initially was a modern style application that we would expect to see at Northern or Western Precinct, with a mixture of opportunities for facilities to build for the community, whether it be housing, larger blocks for other alternatives, and either smaller blocks for townhouses, etc. And really, that is the way that a lot of these things go. But the difference here is we're not building in a Western or Northern Precinct environment. We're dealing in a very closed piece of land, which doesn't lend itself to that type of development. And so I think the development has heard pretty clearly from the community their fears and the concerns. Certainly in the conversations that I've had, there's been some very good points made around a number of issues. Traffic is a big issue because there's one way in and one way out. And so it comes down to how many people are going to be living in this confined area that is really, as I say, a Hams Road in, Hams Road out. It is complicated further by the fact that Gazipur Road is becoming more and more busy as a result of Armstrong Creek, which, as we know, is developing substantially. The developer has changed the numbers of blocks. He's dropped the number down by 50. He's taken out a lot of the smaller ones. I think he's heard the message that the development is not of that style, should not be of that style, and also he's taken out the 2 large blocks. The question in my mind is the reduction in blocks still enough? I haven't really come to that conclusion in my mind yet. I have reached the conclusion that I do believe the piece of land should be developed. We should be looking for these infill developments to minimise the urban sprawl. And so, and it is quite close to the railway station. So there is a case for development there. The magnitude is that in question. So I think it is time for some expert advice. We've heard from the developer, we've heard from the community, we've formed our own views. I think we just need that little bit of expert advice. But I would put on notice that I haven't yet been convinced that the reduction of 50 blocks is necessarily where I'll end up. It may be, but I just want to find out what factors come out of this advice before I could make a final determination. But happy to second Councillor Nelson's motion to take it to the panel.
Thank you, Councillor Manane. Any other councillors? I will speak on it because I met Councillor Nelson out there on a cold mid-Saturday afternoon a couple of months ago with some of the residents and understood their concerns, but I'm supportive of this to go to the independent panel. And I just want to acknowledge that the applicant seems to be working in regards to the submissions to do the best possible outcome. And as Councillor Manane has just alluded to, the removal of the 2 medium density sites that would have housed 40 dwellings, a removal of all lots less than 300 square metres and replace them with 400 square metres, an addition of a minimum 30 lots, at least 800 square metres in size, and to make that $500,000 contribution to the city to improve Gazapur Road, in addition to upgrades to the intersection of Hams and Gazapur roads. So, as Councillor Nelson has said, this is, well, it's not the start, but certainly the finish is still a while away. So I'm supportive of this to go off to the independent panel, and then it will come back before council. Any other council? Councillor? I'll put it back to you, Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr Acting Mayor. Just in closing, I wanted to say that I would say every person that lives up off Hams Road there bought those blocks. I remember when they were selling 1,000+ square metre blocks, so they could build their dream home and retire up there, or raise their family up there, as most of you have done. The duplication of the railway line will make Gazapur Road busier. I have to be careful about what I say so I can vote for this when it comes back to council next year, so please bear that in mind. Armstrong Creek makes Gazapur Road busier, and as we all know, Gazapur Road is being used as a rat run to get around Torquay Road, which is becoming increasingly busier. So Gazapur Road is the quick way to get into town. So I am concerned about this 258 residential subdivision. So that's part of the reason why this is going to the panel, to make sure that we tinker out any of the concerns raised by residents and experts and the developers themselves. So hopefully we can get a good report back next year, but more importantly, please have your say, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item number 4 is the revocation of flood-prone area designation of new lots at Ashbury Estate, stages 8 and 10. Councillor Manane and seconded Councillor Nelson.
Yes.
You might just wait there, Pat, for a sec.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I'm surprised they're not waiting for this item.
They were quiet.
Okay, thank you.
This is the item is to consider revoking council's designation of the flood-affected land on the Ashbury Estate. At this stage, they're up to stages 8 and 10, inclusive, better known at 282 to 240 Horseshoe Bend Road, Armstrong Creek. And if the application is to consider revoking that, and I'm happy to recommend it.
Thank you. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr Acting Mayor. Certainly, as someone that drives around Armstrong Creek quite a fair bit lately. I've seen that the revocation works that they've done there, and that is a massive, is it a dam? I'm not sure what to call it, but it's certainly a very large piece of infrastructure, and the people at the Ashbury estate should be comfortable at night to know that their insurance premiums are going to go down, but B, they won't get flooded. So I think it's a great outcome.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to comment on this? Otherwise, put it to the vote. All those in... back to you, Councillor Minogue. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item number 5 is the procurement policy update. Moved Councillor Nelson and seconded Councillor Minogue. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr Acting Mayor. I'm not getting much chance to breathe or take some water in, but I'll do my best. This procurement update, dare I say it socialises the procurement policy a little, where it provides, it addresses factors that such as gender equity, recycling content and social outcomes. So it socialises the procurement a bit more, something that as a procurement officer for over a decade I'm not really used to. Or certainly wasn't used to, but also it diverts money. It asks to divert money to not-for-profits as well, as part of their profit when they have their procurements, or if they're successful in their procurements. So I think it's a good idea that the city sort of lead the way in that regard and be exemplar for the community. So I support the policy update.
Thank you, Councillor Minogue.
Thanks, Councillor Nelson. It's an update, and I'm sure we've all read it. Here in Geelong, we do have the benefit of the GROW initiative, which does give us a vehicle as well as a focus on getting a balance for the local community in works contracted by council, which I understand is about $200 million a year. So there's no excuse why, where possible, there couldn't be some focus on local procurement. And as we're a growing city, and also we have a growing level of expertise in just about all levels of procurement now. So we'd like to see, of course, our local industry do well off the $200 million that we put out each year. So I'm very happy to recommend the update.
Thank you. Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Mr Acting Mayor, and two previous council speakers. Look, I was a bit confused when this was first brought to us, because I actually didn't think it went far enough in terms of our intent as a council. We are one of the largest spenders in the local community, and I strongly believe that not only should we had been adopting the principles, in particular of GROW, in terms of our procurement, but we should have been setting some mandatory targets in terms of a council to ensure that the community gets the benefit from the significant amount of funds that council does expend each year. But what has been explained to me by our officers is that this is the policy, and the next part's the strategy of how we actually, the operational strategy of how we actually implement the policy's social procurement requirements. And it's not just the social procurement requirements that council has to be considered as well too. It's also the Geelong Chamber of Commerce has a very good payment principle that they encourage all state and other government tiers to actually sign up onto as well too. And what's been explained to me is that this operational strategy of the procurement of the policy is the focus where we need to see if we can meet the payment policies of the Chamber of Commerce, which is essentially a commitment to a number of days of payment once an invoice is actually sent. And it's amazing how important timeframes are in terms of cash flow for businesses, and the impact that it does make if organisations like the City of Greater Geelong can pay within a short time frame. But the most important aspect of this policy is really about our social procurement commitments and the flow-on impact that will have for the broader community is one of the best ways that we can start to address some of the social disadvantage that actually occurs in our community. And I encourage the officers when developing the operational strategy for the procurement document to really do see if we can have some mandatory targets introduced. An example might be any project over $10 million does have to have some mandatory targets in it associated with the social benefits that come from the expenditure in those areas. I mean, the state government certainly has it themselves in terms of capital works projects where they have over a certain value. The tenderer must actually adhere to Indigenous employment opportunities, local procurement opportunities, gender equality and apprenticeships as well too. In terms, I understand that if a project's over $100 million for the state government, you actually have to commit to a certain level of recruitment of new apprentices in your document. And I would love if we could actually move to that level as well too as a council, because it's the best way that we, yes, it certainly will have some financial cost to the organisation and the delivery of projects, but I actually believe it will give us one of the greatest opportunities to try to address the significant disparity of opportunity that actually exists in our community. You know, like I know I come from the northern suburbs of Geelong, but the reality, 21.7% unemployment is not acceptable. And I understand Whittington experiences similar levels of unemployment as well too. And any way that we as a council, in terms of our expenditure in a direct sense, can try to address those issues, I think we should. And that includes our whole employment process as well too. You know, like TAC, WorkSafe and NDIS are doing some fantastic work in terms of traineeships and apprenticeships, providing employment opportunities for people from non-English speaking backgrounds, from disadvantaged backgrounds in terms of lower education levels, and with an employment population of about 2,700 employees. The City of Greater Geelong certainly has a long way to go when you compare us to the TAC, WorkSafe and NDIS, and I hope that this policy does start to get the administration to think about what we can do in a direct sense and a targeted sense to improve the livability for all in the Geelong community. So it is significant what we're actually adopting here tonight, and I hope we can move to some mandatory targets and some baseline aspirations as a council about what we wish to achieve in terms of our procurement policies.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mr Acting Mayor. Look, I support the proposal before us. I think it really reflects community expectations around procurement, and just as I think more and more people in their day-to-day lives are thinking more carefully about how they source goods and services and are seeking things that are environmentally and socially responsible. As a council, people expect us to do more than just seek services for the absolute cheapest price. The way what we spend our money on in terms of procuring goods and services has impacts beyond the actual good and service that we procure. And as Councillor Aitken has pointed out, one area where there are obvious implications is what's the impact on local employment, and that's obviously a major concern in some of the areas that he's highlighted, including in my ward in Whittington. The environmental impacts as well are becoming more important, and as a council we're increasingly conscious of the environmental impact that various the procurement of goods and services has on our community, as well as our own operations. We have to manage the waste, and that incurs costs for us. So I think this is a really a positive procurement policy in those respects. It's also recognising that there are some practical aspects that mean that perhaps some of our true aspirations can't quite be reached at the moment. But as Councillor Aitken has said, there is a broader piece of work around our strategy that we can look at, where we can certainly set some aspirational targets with respect to, in particular, social and environmental outcomes. But overall, I think this is a really good piece of work and one that I think the community will hopefully be very supportive of.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Otherwise,
just very quickly,
I
think the previous councillors have articulated well. The only thing I'd suggest is that there is more work to be done, but what we probably need to do also, and I know that we do a reasonable job, but is just to continue on the theme that Councillor Sullivan talked about previously, is in regards to the engagement and communication, particularly with local suppliers and contractors. And we know that they continue to change. So, where we may have those that have been in the industry for a significant amount of time, they're probably familiar with our policies, but we have a lot of new businesses starting up. Obviously, we're growing at a rate of knots, and they may not be as familiar with the opportunities that are available for local contractors and local suppliers. And as we can see, that there is a weighting that's already applied of up to 10% for local content, where there may be generating local employment or fostering innovation and relationships here in this area. I thought that previously, and maybe we should just revisit it, I thought with a previous policy that we actually did have some weighting previously on the encouragement of contractors and suppliers using apprentices. And if I remember rightly, that was introduced at one time in the past, but seems to be absent from this policy. So we may be able to look at our historic policies to guide us in that area as well.
Thank you. Back to you to close, Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. From my recollection, there was a local content part of that procurement policy. I'm not sure if that's right, Mike. The local content, it was already part of that already. Yeah. What I failed to mention earlier, and I'll mention it now, the biggest thing for me with procurement is managing risk. I'm sure Mike would agree with that. So we need to make sure that we get value for money for our procurement, and that's not necessarily the cheapest thing to buy, because that mightn't last long, or it might even cost us money. So we need to manage that risk, and it's a real balance with everything that was spoken about before, with regard to content and social procurement and gender equity and recycled content and other social outcomes. So we really need to manage that risk, because after all, this is ratepayers' money. We aren't a business, we are a government, but we're sort of a business, so we need to make sure that we spend our ratepayers' money as best we can, because as the state government has seen it, the money does run out, and we don't have the TAC to take their operating surplus from. So we need to operate within our $500 million spend, and that's it. So we need to make sure that we manage that risk. Thanks, Mr.
Thank you. Put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item number 6 is planning authorisations. Council to staff. Moved Councillor Mason and seconded Councillor Asher. Councillor Mason.
Mr Acting Mayor, I'm pleased to report that another town planner, Mr Lewis Muston, has been appointed to our staff, and that all the appropriate processes have taken place. So now all that's required is that by the Planning Environment Act is that Mr Muston be authorised to act as set out in the instrument of appointment, and I hereby move the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Asher.
Thanks, Mr Acting Mayor. There's not a lot to say other than I am very happy to see so many planning appointments in response to some of the fora that Councillor Contell and I held, which was part of the problem that we identified. We were a bit short on staff, so it's good to see they're coming on board.
Thank you. Any other councillor? Otherwise, back to you, Councillor Mason.
Nothing further to add, Mr Acting Mayor.
No, it's so good. Thank you to Councillor Aitken and particularly to Councillor Grisbeck for informing us of that little glitch. So, as we're aware, there's significant strategic planning and discussions occurring around what should be made of the mall in the future, and there's much work still to be done in regards to that. As was mentioned through our budget discussions, in fact, we have a line item in the budget going forward into the next financial year of some $250,000 to do more master planning around the mall, and that's good and that's positive. And I'm sure that through that engagement process, we will be engaging with similar organisations to what I mentioned before, and similar groups, as well as potentially working with privateers and developers that we know have aspirational plans for their developments in that area that would change the future landscape of that area. But with all that said, I'm sure that as I sit here amongst my colleagues, that we can no longer sit back and wait for that change to occur, which may be years ahead, with what we're hearing and what we're seeing and what's being experienced in the mall. There's no doubt that there are some great initiatives taking place, but there's more that can be done. And this notice of motion is about taking ownership back of our mall, and to do that now, not in 2 or 3 years' time. It's about installing and implementing consistent and continuous activation initiatives into the mall to make it a more engaging and appealing and safe place to spend time, to meet, to socialise with family, friends, or as individuals. And it's about driving out those who choose to congregate in there and impose fear and intimidation and at times violence on the broader community. In fact, if we get this right, we may just be able to create what's somewhat known as the Hawthorne effect, which is a phenomenon in which individuals alter their behaviour in response to being or feeling like they're being observed, and generally it's in a positive nature. So it's bringing people back into the mall and caring for that space with a large collective group. This is also about a circuit breaker. This notice of motion is not intended to be strategic. That's for the future. This is to bring a solution here and now, something that will address some of the issues, or at least change up the environment. And as I've said previously, not intended to be a silver bullet, but to create a different environment to what we have today, and to do that before Christmas this year. So we're putting a short time frame on this, and there's a reason for that, is because we want to deliver short to medium term initiatives that will work in conjunction with whatever's delivered in the future. And I know that there'll be councillors here that will talk somewhat potentially about what the future may look like. But the notice of motion that I've put up here today is not intended to address the future. It's intended to address today. Whilst it may have an influence on what occurs down the track, it's really to try and provide change immediately that will bring people back to that space. Coming Christmas time, you know, what I would like to see is that we've got people coming back into the city not only to celebrate the festive season and to shop and to use the Green Spine and to enjoy our waterfront and to bring their families down to the Christmas tree and of course take advantage of the free parking but it's also to come into the CBD and be able to safely and comfortably either walk to the mall and through the mall to a destination, which may be one of the shopping precincts, or to be able to sit in the mall and have their lunch and engage in some of the initiatives that may be brought to this council to consider. We've got a shared responsibility here, and again, I think other councillors will talk to this. This is not about us going alone. There is an opportunity here for us to partner with other agencies, the state government and community for that matter. And there also has been a lot of good work that's been done in the past that I'm sure we'll be able to pull information from. And it's not for me to be suggesting what those ideas are. This is really just creating a vehicle for our officers to be able to explore that, to come back to us with that very quickly after we've had the engagement process completed, give us some costings on that and allow us as a council group then to pull some triggers that will make a step change and a quantum change in a very short period of time that then enables us the time to look at what the future may in fact look like. We've had literally hundreds, close to thousands of social media messages sent directly and indirectly to us, pleading us as councillors and as a council to please do something, and hence this is the reason that we have this notice of motion here tonight. And I know that others would feel the same way, but personally, I couldn't look myself in the mirror if we didn't take some of these steps today, and then to see something occur of a serious nature in that mall, which may not be prevented by anything that we do anyway, but we're trying. We've got to try something, and we've got to change the environment to get a different result. As they keep saying, if you keep doing what you're doing, you'll continue to get the same result. Councillor Manane mentioned that we've had a number of attempts at the mall, and perhaps we have, and I don't disagree with that. But environments change, the logistics of the environments change, and we've had what we've got in place now for quite some time, and it clearly isn't working. So unless we do something, it will remain the same. Not to mention, and not to discount, some of the real challenges that are out there, whether it be rough sleeping, whether it be unemployment, whether it be the drug challenges, whether it be mental health, that we all know have to be dealt with. And there are initiatives in place at all levels of government, philanthropic and other agencies that are trying to do good work in that space. This is not to fix that. This is not to create world peace. This is really to make some quick, swift, prompt changes that changes up the environment, that gives us a different outcome to what we have today, and we probably don't know what that actually will be until we see it in action. I think I'll leave it at that for the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mr Acting Mayor. Look, I'm supportive of this notice of motion, although perhaps come at it from a slightly different perspective. The mall is an area where I think most people in Geelong are very familiar with the mall. It's an area that I would walk through at least a couple of times a week, and I have to say that some of the portrayals of the mall and the perceptions of the mall are probably not quite accurate. It's certainly not as bad as it's often made out to be. That said, I think as a location it is... I think in a lot of people's minds in Geelong, it is the heart, the real centre of Geelong, and it isn't a space that I think people feel real pride in. It could do with a bit of work to improve it, and I think that's only highlighted by some of the other great revitalisation work that's happening around Geelong. You contrast the mall now with the west side of Little Mallup Street, you contrast it with the Green Spine, and it really serves to highlight that this is a space that hasn't received the same degree of attention to date in terms of making it a space that's really inclusive and inviting. there are a number of challenges around the space that come down to the physical design aspects of it, the interaction between the various private interests in the space. There are a whole range of social issues that do culminate in that area, but again, I think there is some unfair stigmatisation that happens against people who use the mall, in particular people who are bus users. I think get unfairly stigmatised by some of the perceptions and discourse around the mall as a space. And so I think this initiative is a really positive one because I think it will bring some positive activity and people into that space and hopefully start to generate a bit more civic pride around that area. And as Councillor Contell said, often what assists with any antisocial behaviour is eyes on the street. It makes everyone feel safer, including people who are currently, using that space. I think safety is just as much a concern for everyone around that space. So I think this is a positive initiative. The other thing that I like about this is that it doesn't run against any of those future plans or other work that's taking place around the mall. It's complementary. It feeds into it. We will learn things from anything that we do here that will help to enhance other efforts around really improving that mall as a space and as I said, as an area that I think could really generate some civic pride. I'm supportive of this notice of motion. I'll be really interested to see what those initiatives are that'll be coming before us. I like the timeline because it would be good to get some initiatives in place before that summer period where we want lots of people out and about on the streets in Geelong. I'm very much looking forward to the outcomes of this should it be successful, and I encourage my fellow councillors to support this notice of motion if they feel similarly about them all.
Thank you, Councillor Mishold. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I just had a question because I fully support this notice of motion, but just wanted to make sure that it included seeking funding opportunities from state and federal governments. Is that part of the notice of motion or not? Because otherwise I'd like to make an amendment to that.
I think at the moment, if I can answer that, Mr. Murray, Mr. Murray, Councillor Murray here. It's written broadly to engage with all those relative parties. I think when the initiatives come back, Councillor Nelson, that would be the point in time where we would probably consider those needs. Okay. So I think it's broad enough to cover us off there.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Councillor. I certainly agree with the notice of motion, the intent, but part of the noise out there in the community is that I'm getting is that we haven't sought funding from the state or federal government, and you've heard of that as well, Mr. Acting Mayor. So we're not alone, I think is the key here. I don't think there's a panacea that will fix this, but I think what this notice of motion shows is that we are listening to our community and we are acting and reacting to try and reactivate this mall, pardon the pun. Too many activations there, but and get it done before Christmas, before that summer period, because we need to do something. Because I eat there some days out the front of the new Geelong 80 building, and it's fine. You sit there and you listen to the music. The only real problem I'm finding there is the damn seagulls that try and take your food. Apart from that, the mall's pretty good. But
eat quicker, Councillor.
But I'm not there 24/7. I'm just there at lunchtime. So, but we need to act and we need to get some results on the board before Christmas. So I fully support the notice of motion.
Thank you, Councillor Manane.
Thank you. Look, I really support Councillor Contel's initiative and congratulate you on it, Eddie. I do hope, like everybody, is that the next change of the Mel is the last one. And clearly that's going to come in a few years when we get the major infrastructure change. But I think this initiative and its success could actually pay a fairly big bearing on the success of what will be the final Mel. So I think it could play an important role in the short term and even maybe have an impact in the long term. So I'm very supportive of what you're suggesting. There's a lot of experts out there that have been telling us what to do with the Mel, so it'll be interesting to see what they come up with. And in fact, I just wonder how we're going to articulate this opportunity to the general public, because we want to hear from people who may be able to come up with those very good suggestions. And from my perspective, we more fixed infrastructure of seats and trees, and that's not the answer. I think we need to encourage people through there and to make it a place for people to enjoy. I think if it could become that sort of a space in the next 12 months, it really will give the final solution the maximum chance of being that final solution. And again, we do need partners in this, because it's not something that we do on our own, and the more partners we can get towards the solution, the better we can be. So let's get it out there, let's find out who's interested, what they've got to say, and I think Council needs to put its hand in its pocket. And I know that's strange coming from me when I'm saying we've got a tight budget, but I think this is pretty important, and we need to make sure that we give it a fair chance.
Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I suppose in my first response, I'd be looking for a durable solution rather than a final solution. However, this is all part of the revitalising of central Geelong, and really that's again the big picture, where we need the big funding, and if we're going to be seeking funding, I'm looking for the big picture funding. And in the meantime, I also see occasional or not consistent antisocial behaviour in the mall, but I do see it from time to time, and I'm down there quite often. So in the meantime, I think quick impact projects will have a positive effect, and I'm very fully supportive of any short term, how we define medium term I'm not sure, but quick impact projects which will keep this place alive and a livable place.
Thank you. Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Mr. Acting Mayor. Look, thank you, Councillor Contel and Councillor Mansfield, for bringing this before the Council. I feel a bit of deja vu about this because it's exactly what happened in the first council that was elected in 1995 in the city of Greater Geelong, but I'll come back to that point in just a minute. But look, I think the most important thing we have to actually consider is actually returning confidence in that particular piece of public open space. And we need to be able to restore the public's confidence to want to actually go to that site location. But more importantly, we actually want to restore the investors and the confidence in that site location as well too, because anything temporarily needs to have the property owners, and it also needs the business owners to be participating in that area as well too. And so whatever does occur in a temporary basis or a longer term basis has to be done in consultation with the property owners and the business investors in that site location, because we will continue to repeat history at that site location. And that includes, I mean, the Geelong Advertiser is an immediate neighbour of that precinct, and their responsibility isn't just to write about it, their responsibility is also to activate how they're engaged with that particular space as well too. And so the challenge really is out there for those that are developing the temporary activation solutions and the longer term solutions is to work with those people that are going to make the real change about confidence. And those real people are the property investors and the business investors. The reality is one side of the mall is owned by one investor, which is actually the Market Square, and you actually see that there is an interaction between that space and that shopping centre. And it's actually quite fascinating, as you get older you see significant changes. And I can remember just before the Corio Theatre was actually closed down in that particular part of Geelong, and I saw E.T. and I did cry, as a 12-year-old. And that area actually did have a theatre on one side, which was the Corio Theatre, and it had a second theatre on the other side, which was the Regent Theatre. And it was a vibrant part of Geelong, and people from my parents' vintage talked about the McCann Street area, which was certainly in the 50s and 60s was the west end of Geelong. And when I say west end, the west end of Little Mallop Street now. And look, the future shouldn't frighten all of us about what we do with the mall, because we actually see what's happened with the west side of Little Mallop Street. And the west end is a fantastic example about the business community working in partnership with the infrastructure providers, in this case the state and the council, to actually deliver a very vibrant piece of public open space. And I think we do have a great opportunity to be able to do that at the east end now of Little Mallop Street. And what it does mean in the future, well, we don't have to decide that now. But what we do have to do is commit to actually engage with all the stakeholders. I mean, I do want to emphasise that I've had private discussions with the local member in Christine Cousins. She's very interested to want to work with council in partnership to find solutions to this project, and I think we should work with the local member. What we should also work with the Geelong Authority, which has a vested responsibility to help revitalise the CBD of Geelong. And we should work with Regional Development Victoria and also the Department of Planning that all have significant investment in Geelong in terms of the strategic and bureaucratic investments that have been made over the last 7 years. Essentially what has happened is we've been reminded that we have turned our back on the mall. The history is that when the mall was last redeveloped, which was in the plans were created in the mid-1990s, we didn't have the waterfront to the level that we did. Eastern Beach was just starting to get rejuvenated. We didn't have the Johnsons Park redevelopments that we have. We didn't have Deakin as a precinct as well too in the city of Greater Geelong. And we certainly didn't have the west end of Little Mallop Street 30 years ago. And from a competition viewpoint for public open space, we have an immense number now in the CBD of Geelong. So the significance of the mall, that the mall plays, has been devalued from all those investments. And that's where we do need to have a look at them now to see where it actually does fit. I mean, I did a lot of work recently to brainstorm what could the future be about the mall, because like all of us do want to restore confidence in the community and restore confidence in the investors in that locality. And I actually gravitated towards the Fairmont Street example in Las Vegas. And for those people who aren't familiar with that example, well, Fairmont Street is actually the original part of Las Vegas, which is where the Golden Nugget and all the traditional casinos that existed from the 1950s and 1960s. Then the Strip took over from that, and the Strip actually dominated all the investors and activity in the Las Vegas region until the last 2 or 3 years. And what happened in the Fairmont Street area was they actually put a cover over the whole of Fairmont Street, and they actually put LED screen, which goes for about nearly 2 kilometres under this cover. and it just created this incredible visual collage underneath that canopy. And what it's done is it's attracted everybody back to that site location again now. So that's the clever and creative type of thinking that certainly I'd like to challenge the council longer term, the Geelong Authority, the state government and everyone to be able to actually see are there some clever and creative solutions to look at for the future for the mall. And of course one of them may even be to actually totally disband the mall and not have a mall, because and that's something we need to consider as well too, because of the issue of competition of other public open space at that site location. And but the reality is, Councillor Manane, this will be the fourth incarnation of the mall. It seems to be every 20 years we do something different, but the reality is it doesn't, excuse me, resolve the problems that we're actually trying to achieve, and that is about we need this space to be a confident public space that the community wishes to be part of, and a confident space that private investors, both property and business investors, are prepared to put significant contributions into to activate that space. And the best thing for the mall in the future would be that we're no longer talking about the mall, and in fact we're talking about the whole of Geelong as a vibrant and clever and creative central business district.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. I wanted to say something, and I was slightly distracted when you mentioned ET at the Cryo Theatre, Councillor Aiken. I also saw ET there. I wasn't 12. I didn't cry, but I certainly, it came to me when you said that, so good memories. I want to commend Councillor Contell for bringing this before the court. Gee, see, that's a flashback. I've gone back too far. Gosh, the council tonight. And to pinch some of the words that have been used as civic pride and confidence, certainly we have a great opportunity as a council, and I think it's a real test for us. I don't see it particularly as a reincarnation. It could be quite simple, and I haven't got the answers to it, but certainly this gives us a great opportunity to really work together with all the stakeholders, and I say all the stakeholders because we have Public Transport Victoria in relation to the buses and the bus stops. Certainly Market Square, I think we really have to bring them to the table kicking and screaming. And of course, and we mentioned the other side of the Mall is privately owned. So the opportunity is there, and you know, of the last couple of weeks I've spent some time, walked around it, and you know, as you walk, you think of possible things. And I don't want to be critical of previous councils, but whoever came up with an idea of dumping a public toilet right in the middle of the Mall is so disappointing. The other day, the door, it was obviously stuck open, so you're wandering around and you're just looking, and there's a toilet only 15 metres from you as you walk along, and it begs belief, but there it was. And of course nothing wrong with the toilet, but when it's just open and it's a public space and people are sitting having some lunch, it's not a good look, and I was really disappointed with the television, A Current Affair. I don't think we were portrayed well in that, Geelong as a city, and it's not a true perception of what Geelong is, but what it has done is bring this before us tonight. And we've discussed it, and the mall is a high priority for this council. And we had the Safe City Summit held back in 2017, and the same things were spoken about then. The community feels unsafe. There's poor lighting and design, there's antisocial behaviour, and alcohol and other drug use. So times we've moved on, but there's still the same issues. And you're thinking, I've perhaps put my hat on for the Central Geelong Marketing Committee and the Christmas program, where we lost the Myer windows just last week. So maybe there's an opportunity, to bring those windows up into the not the windows, but the Christmas decorations or the Christmas windows up into the mall, and that would certainly bring numbers into the mall. but of course there's other work that needs to be done before then. So as I said, there's work to be done. It's certainly, we need a heart of Geelong, and that is the heart, but it's not beating. And I think we have a great opportunity. As I said, and the police say that the criminal offences are down right across Geelong, and they've stated that the criminal element in there is exaggerated, but it's that perception. Our daughters, our wives, for the guys, they have to feel safe walking through that mall, and my wife won't walk through there, and that's disappointing. So we have this opportunity. And another thing too, that as councillors we have a meeting next Thursday evening with the officers. So as well as this notice of motion tonight, that we have a meeting together, hopefully, next Thursday night where we can all attend and maybe come up with something, So we don't want a talk fest to go on and on and on, but I think if we can get together as a group and, throw things around, who knows what might fall out of the tree. So, bring it on. Anyone else going to say any comment? Councillor Ron, did you know?
No, thanks, Mr Acting Mayor.
Thank you. Back to you, Councillor Contell.
Thanks, Mr Acting Mayor. With all the leadership roles you currently have, we may well be referring to you as Your Honour at some stage in the future.
Very well doubt that.
Look, thanks for everyone's input. There's no doubt that there is a lot of interest in this matter, judging by social media on the weekend and also just people talking to us in the street. There's so many people that want to get involved in agencies, and I acknowledge Jennifer Karamati, who's in our gallery today, has been very interested in what's going on here, who's the CEO of the Committee for Geelong and also with Creative Geelong. So thanks for coming to listen to us discuss this tonight. As Councillor Aitken suggested, we absolutely need to be in lockstep and engaged with the property owners and the retailers in that area, and not only engaged and get their input, but whatever we do in there, in fact, has to be complementary to what's already occurring in that trading environment rather than competitive. And so we certainly don't want to be establishing that. I think we've heard enough tonight that suggests that this is a priority for us. It was noted as a priority some meetings ago where we, particularly Councillor Aitken, raised it in one of the reports that we were hearing at the potato shed at the time, and hence the reason we've got the funding in the budget. And there's no doubt that whatever's occurring, in the CBD and in Geelong in general, at this point in time, is happening under our watch. So we've got a duty of care to demonstrate real leadership whilst partnering, but leading by positive example, and that's what we're doing tonight.
Thank you. I'll put that notice of motion to the vote. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Well done.
Thank you.
Next notice of motion, yes, is the Local Government Bill 2019, moved Councillor Asher and seconded Councillor Aitken. Councillor Asher.
Thank you, Mr Acting Mayor. I don't think this one will attract quite the amount of debate as the last item. Essentially, last Monday, the Minister for Local Government announced that a new local government bill will be proposed later this year, and while we have a paper outlining some of the changes here, the draft bill hasn't yet been released, but despite that, feedback has been requested by the 17th of July, which is 3 weeks away. 3 weeks tomorrow, actually. So we would like to seek an extension to the timeline, and this notice of motion is to request that our CEO writes a letter to the Minister asking for the deadline for feedback to be extended to the 30th of August. So we've already written to the Municipal Association of Victoria, of which we're a member, asking that it also requests an extension. We just feel it's important that the community has time to review the draft bill and to provide comment.
Thank you. Councillor Aitken.
Thank you very much, Mr Acting. Look, I support too that we do ask the Minister to consider an extension of time. the current request to actually respond by the 17th of July essentially means we have no capacity to be able to consult with our community about the proposed changes. It also means that as councillors, we actually don't have the capacity to be able to collectively come up with responses as well too in terms of that time frame. And there are some significant proposed changes in the legislation that impact on the City of Greater Geelong. Of course, one of those is the removal of the City of Greater Geelong Act, and that actually does have consequences for us in terms of our local government's structure that we have in this municipality. Example is the 2-year fixed terms for our leadership roles. I'm not familiar with what the new Local Government Act is actually proposing, but if it's the same as the current Local Government Act, well, it says you do it every 12 months. And I think we do have a responsibility to ask our community and also our thoughts as well too as councillors about either the merits or the demerits of that proposal. And there's also the discussion about the ward structure as well too. We haven't had a proper discussion as a collective group and the community to assess the multi-member ward proposals and whether that is a preferred governance structure. Certainly I'm a strong advocate of equal representation in terms of that everybody who votes in Geelong should have the same number of representatives, and at the present time there isn't an anomaly in our governance structure in Geelong where if you're north of the Ballarat railway line, you can only vote for 2 councillors directly, whereas if you are south of the Ballarat railway line, you can actually get 3 councillors that you directly can vote under our preferential voting system. So there are some opportunities to change it, but unfortunately I don't think it is reasonable to be able to expect to be able to respond by the 17th of July in terms of this. And I understand that Councillor Griesbeck, who's not here tonight, who's our representative of the MAV, the MAV is also requesting an extension of time as well too to request the Minister to just consider that the proposed draft does introduce some new changes that haven't been consulted about with the local government sector, and those changes are significant, and as a consequence they do deserve greater capacity for people to have a more valued response as opposed to having a quick response. So hopefully the Minister is actually listening and in a capacity to be able to respond to the industry's request to extend the time frame. I understand the Minister's sort of essentially saying that 90% of the Act has actually been out in the public agenda for nearly 18 months to 2 years now. So, he has got an agenda and enthusiasm to push forward with the proposed changes, and I appreciate that, but some of those things that we've just touched on in terms of the implications to our governance structure, the change in our leadership election models, and the fact that we haven't had an opportunity to express our views or the local community views on those issues are an important reason to request the extension of time.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr Acting Mayor. It's interesting what Councillor Aitken said about the bill going out and then us not getting a chance to meet and discuss it and then vote on it accordingly. That suggests to me that the Minister doesn't want our opinion, hence the request for an extension. It's interesting the local government bill, the proposed bill, as Councillor Aitken said, brings back single council awards, which as we all know, the Commission of Inquiry was dead set against because it said that councillors had their own little fiefdoms, so to speak. And now here we are with the local government minister recommending this. So I really think that we as a council need to get together and vote for this notice of motion brought forth by Councillor Asher and Councillor Griesbeck in her absence. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mr Acting Mayor. Look, I am certainly very supportive of this notice of motion. it's not just the short time frame, but the lack of information that really makes it virtually impossible to give genuine, good quality, considered feedback as a council on these proposed changes. We have some limited information, as Councillor Asher has pointed out, but we all have a number of questions about some of those changes, and there's no more detailed information that's been provided to date about that. Yes, a large portion of the local government bill has been in the public arena since last year, but there are some changes there are some additional changes that have been floated recently that we have not had the opportunity to consider, in contrast to the previous bill that we did have some time to look over and consider the implications for us as a council, and we had an opportunity to provide feedback and considered feedback into that process. So I'm certainly very concerned about the integrity of this feedback process, given the very short timelines and the lack of information we've been given as a council, and so am very supportive of the notice of motion.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Back to you, Councillor Asher.
Thank you, Mr Acting Mayor, and I really have to emphasise acknowledging Councillor Grisbeck for all the work she's done on this. She's unable to attend tonight, so I did ask if I would put this notice of motion forward, but she's done a power of work, and she's also our MAV rep as well. And at risk of harping on, I think the fact the City of Greater Geelong has been through significant change, with changes to ward structures recently, the mayoral voting processes, we've had monitors in place to check how it's all working, and I think we all probably furiously agree that to push through changes, for example going back to single council awards without time to reflect and find an agreed position as a council and see what people out in the community think is best for the region, I don't think that's appropriate. So once again, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Asher. Put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Move on to section D, the Assembly of Council. Just to move on a second. Been a mover, Councillor Sullivan. Seconder, Councillor Mansfield. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Councillor Manane, okay? Yep. The Section E is the planning delegations. Been a mover for those.